Reason why we took off with the reason why I decided to use FM satellites rather than some of the others that are up there is because this is something that even if you can't contact one, you can hear a FM satellite on your handy talkie many times, especially now with the space station with a repeater back on board again. That was one of my favorite satellite activities back in the day when that was active in 2007, 2008 through 2010, and then all of a sudden it didn't work anymore. They just put one back in September, and so this gives you an opportunity. We'll give you enough information to be able to walk out of here and at least hear it, if not work it with a handy talkie, with a mobile radio, or like Robert over there in 4XDO with that um, multi-band receiver radio he's got. We're going to cover terms. Terms are going to be important because one of the things we miss out a lot on in a lot of the satellite instruction books and things like that is they kind of leave one or two terms out and then they start using it somewhere down the line. You're like, what in the world did that mean? We're going to work on that a little bit. Talk a little bit about equipment. We're not going to kill that a whole lot, but we're going to give you some ideas of what type of equipment you want to have to be able to get on these FM satellites. Talk about the four main usable FM satellites, the best ones to use right now. Then we're going to get into the Doppler effect. Doppler effect is always one of the toughest subjects here. I've been studying that again for the last 3 months so I could better understand it, better try to describe it, keep our fingers crossed that there's enough ways to push this along. Doppler is very important to you because it's going to help you stay on the right frequency to be able to talk through the satellite. We'll talk about some resources for satellite passes and tracking the satellites. Then we'll dig into a little more about tracking the satellites. We'll talk about the exchange you'll have when you do get on a satellite and try to talk, and you'll hear it a lot when you're listening. And also included during that time, I'm going to play some audio from some contacts I made with some school kids back in 2010 up at Antioch Elementary. A lot of the kids made contact there, and we lucked out. 2 satellites came over within 30 minutes of each other. It's pretty cool. So they got to talk through one satellite and got to talk through another. And a guy up in Ohio recorded the entire thing. So it's kind of neat. And then finally, I'll leave you with the frequencies of the most popular satellites. I will be mailing out this presentation as well as links to some of the better resources that are out there. Okay, terms. One of the things that used to confuse me was, okay, which one do I transmit on? Which one do I receive on? They kept using uplink and downlink. Okay, uplink, you are sending your signal up to the satellite. Okay, so that's your transmit frequency. Downlink frequency, that's the one you're listening to. That's your receive frequency. Doppler effect. Quick term, we're going to be expanding on this definition quite a bit. The book definition for AMSAT was the apparent drift in frequency in relation to the speed of an object relative to your position. The higher the frequency, the greater the effect. One of the things you'll see is for VHF, the 2-meter band, you don't really worry about the Dopplers much using FM in particular, but to stay on frequency for listening or transmitting when you're on 70 centimeter, you have to adjust that frequency during the course of the satellite pass. Maidenhead grid square, it's a positioning system for giving you your position. Okaloosa County is Echo Mike 60. Now, if you go across the Alabama border, you're in Echo Mike 61. Why is this important to you? Because FM satellites are very, very quick contacts because it's a very scarce resource. Where on HF radio, you use a signal report as information sent to say that you've done something, you exchanged some information during a contact. The Maidenhead grid square is what you use for VHF and above to kind of confirm or send information along the contact. And we'll see the standard contact is really quick, really moves fast, but it's still pretty neat. All the FM satellites we'll be talking about today are in low Earth orbit. These are between about, well, I say 370 to 1200 miles. That's because this is part of an old presentation. Now with the ISS back up again, they're down at about 250 miles, I believe, above the surface. Okay, these will be important for later, the next three terms here. TCA, time of closest approach. That's when the satellite is going to be closest to you, and it's also when it's in its highest point in the sky. If the satellite's over on the horizon, that's about as far away as it's going to get. The closer it gets to you, the higher up it gets, which means if it goes right over the top of your head, you're only about 200 miles from that thing. AOS, acquisition of signal. Kind of a fancy term of saying that's when the satellite comes above the horizon. LOS, loss of signal. Another fancy way of saying it went back below horizon. So let's say your satellite is doing one of these numbers. You kind of see my hand sweeping. It comes up over here. That's your AOS position when it comes above the horizon. When it comes up as high as it's going to go, that's your time of closest approach, TCA. And then when it sets, it'll be the loss of signal. Finally, the term fading. The tough part about using a handy-talkie or a vertical antenna like I use on satellites from time to time is the satellite itself spins. Could be slow, could be a little faster. So while you have your vertical antenna up like that, that satellite is spinning like this. And as you probably remember from way back in your tech exam, the best way for two antennas to work together is if they're polarized the same way, like this. When that satellite's spinning and it gets like this, the signal kind of fades out a little bit. So that's where that fading comes from. Let's talk about equipment. Most of you have at least half the equipment you need to actually make a contact on the International Space Station. You have to have radios capable of transmitting and on 2 meter. This is part of an old display. I should change this up. Transmitting or receiving on 2 meters and listening and transmitting on 70 centimeters at the same time. That's the best way to go. You'll also under the current satellites, you will need a tone capability. Not a big deal now. Everybody tends to have tones on their radios, but back about 20 years ago, there were rigs out there without tones, and that doesn't work too well for the satellites we'll be looking at. The Baofengs, the cheap radio, and the Waxons, a little more expensive but nice as well. You can they have VHF, UHF on there, so you can work with those. A lot of people will use two radios. There's an advantage to using two handy-talkies. When you're talking on one, and if you have an earphone in listening to the other, you can actually hear yourself talk through the satellite. It really is the best way to work if you've got that much capability, because then you can hear how solid you're getting into the satellite. And then, so like I say on the slide, it's even better when you can listen while transmitting. Mobile rigs can work too. I have made satellite contacts on mobile rigs. I've talked to the ISS on a mobile rig by accident. But almost anything can work and get you up there. You also must have some way to find out when a satellite's going to be available. It doesn't do you a whole lot of good to have all your radios going and stuff like that, and not be able to hear a satellite if it comes, or not know when the satellite's going to be up. You can monitor, but it's a little better if you can program that, or find out when they're going to come up above the horizon. Things you need. I would suggest if you're going to try to use your handy-talkie, and it's not the optimal way to go, but can be used, get a little bit nicer antenna. This is not the stock antenna for this Kenwood model. It's a little bit better, but it works. But has I've heard the ISS before. I've heard AO 92 using this radio before? Simply this way. Chuck KK4GIS, his first encounter with a satellite was using his handy-talkie with just a slightly better than stock antenna. Now, to be able to confirm your contacts, you'll need some type of logging capability so you can have the contact. Well, there are several ways you can do that. You can try pencil and paper, but believe me, if you're already trying to hold the handy-talkie or using one of these types of antennas, trying to spin that around a little bit, yeah, you already got it, and then try to push the talk. You've already got a lot going on. So I highly suggest using a voice recorder. Now, there are plenty of options there. You can use the one on your phone. Most of your phones have those now. A number of radios these days also have voice recorders. I know the IC 9700 does. There's a number of Yaesu radios I know of that have recording capability, even in handy talkies. And so that's one less thing you have to do. If you know what time the recording started, then everything else is just a timer after that. Some nice to have stuff: computer-controlled radios and directional antennas. Yeah, if you get it, having an ASL rotor so it can automatically point directly at those satellites, that's the way to do it. I don't have one of those. Maybe someday. Here are the current usable satellites for FM that I believe are the best ones for new folks to use for maybe your first one. The SO50, which is a Saudi sat launched in 2002. Really nice radio. Very nice satellite. I've used it many times. Some of the recording you'll hear later, I believe, was done on that one, off of that one. They have an uplink of 2 meters and a downlink of 70 centimeters. All these satellites I'm showing you now have a tone. So you have like the local repeaters, because all a satellite is just a repeater on a real high, with a real high antenna. Use a tone, 67.0 hertz for just talking. Now, if on the rare occasion there's nobody already talking on SO50, you have to use another tone just to turn it on. You probably won't encounter this very often, but you will need to set up one channel that has the 74.4 hertz tone to be able to turn it on. Like I say, it won't happen very much over the United States, but if you were on if you took a cruise somewhere out in the Pacific, maybe over to Hawaii or something like that, you might find yourself with the satellite not on. That's how you turn it on. Two recent launches are AO91 and AO92. Those are two of our AMSAT CubeSat satellites that are up there. Not very big. They're about 20 centimeters long, width and depth, but they're doing a decent job up there. You've got beat the frequencies, but both of those need a 67 hertz tone as well. And then the ISS repeater just started up this month. It was down for about 3 days this past weekend. I was kind of surprised about that, and but it's back up again. But there are a number of others available, some on FM, and many on their variable transponder. I'm sorry, linear transponders that use a sideband. Those use a lot more specialized radio, and really not something we're going to cover in this presentation tonight. Okay, one of the big things here is the Doppler effect. If there was no Doppler effect, all you'd have to do is tune into these frequencies that we have right there, and you'd be ready to go. But it doesn't quite work that way. The Doppler effect, by definition here, is makes a transmitter's frequency appear higher when it's moving towards you and lower when it's moving away. Very similar to the way if you're listening to a train pass you and he's blowing his whistle, and you hear that transmitter, the horn, sounds really high when he's over here coming at you, and about the time he passes you, it starts going, the tone starts going low. Works the same way with radio waves. And the faster it's moving, the greater the effect. So when a pass starts and the satellite's moving towards you, you'll have your downlink frequency, your listening frequency, higher than when than the satellite's published frequency. Don't worry, we'll have a series of frequencies that tell you how to run through those instead of trying to guess for yourself. And then because that transmitter's moving very fast towards us, so as we're trying to listen to that transmitter, that frequency is going to be high. Your uplink frequency, your transmitter, you're going to set low. Why are you going to do that? Because when he's moving fast, so he's going to hear you high. But he only has one frequency, so you can't tune it to the same frequency that guy has. You have to tune it a little bit low, so when it gets to him high, it's on his frequency. You'll see the way that works when I show you some examples of the satellite frequencies you tune into your radio. When the satellite is at its highest point in the sky, say it's when it's at its highest point, it is not really moving relative to you. It's moving fast back and forth, but moving distant or coming towards you, it's basically stopped moving for a split second, and that's when those frequencies that you see are exactly on. That's when it's at its highest point. That's when that SO50 will be 145.850 and 436.950 or 795. But as soon as it gets past that point, it starts moving away from you again. So now the Doppler effect starts kicking back in. And then as the pass is ending, the satellite is moving way away from you, so your listening frequency will now be below the published frequency, and your transmitting frequency will be above it. I'm going to open up for questions because this is always a tough part. If there's a question you have that might make you understand better because of my butchered explanation here, let me know, raise a hand or whatever. The cool thing about this is I'm going to give you the frequency, the most needed frequencies for these satellites that will take into account the Doppler, as you can run through about 5 channels or so.
Ron, KI4ZER.
Yes.
Hey, this is DJ. So, general question about that. Is there an automated program that I can install onto my PC or to my Mac that would adjust the frequencies as the satellite passes overhead if I tie that into my remote amateur radio?
Wow, you've seen my presentation already. Yes, there is. And we'll talk about a few of the examples of those. And after I'm done when I send out a page of links and stuff like that, I'll send you links to some of the different programs that are out there. Ham Radio Deluxe has that capability, as does PC Sat 32, which is an AMSAT item. If you have a Mac has a really nice program that AMSAT sells for the Macintosh as well. And what they'll also do for you is they also have the capability to run your rotors, both azimuth and elevation. So yeah, so the long answer is yes, there are, and I use them quite a bit.
Thank you.
This slide right here describes 3 different passes of the AO92. Can you guys see an arrow on my screen or no?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Where my arrow is right now, that is a high pass. Why do I call it a high pass? Because your TCA is going to be 80 degrees. I mean, that's 10 degrees from straight over your head. Now, there's a reason I throw this up here. It's important to know what's going on during one of these or during a number of these passes. For this one, the satellite came above the horizon at 3:45 in the morning, and elevation, of course, is 0. Your uplink frequency. Now, keep in mind the regular uplink frequency for this or transmit frequency is 435.350. That's your publish. You can see where it is right here. Coincidentally, under TCA, like we talked about before. But to be able to appear at that frequency to the satellite. Keep in mind, my transmitter here, and he's moving really fast towards me. So so I have to be transmitting to the such that when he hears me, it appears that I'm on 435.350. So for the transmit frequency, that's actually below the published frequency, down at 435.3398. Close enough to the net to 340 to be happy with. The downlink for the satellite, actually calculated for Doppler, is 145.8834. Now, the reason why I did the numbers this way is because you're going to see the progression of the Doppler effect as the satellite goes through the sky. This is where the satellite is right now. The next one, this one right here, is about this point right here. Its elevation is about 14 degrees. I'm sorry, about right here, about 14 degrees. It took nearly 3 minutes to go from here to here as far as the way the satellite would appear on the ground or tend to be on the ground. And you notice that because it was pretty quick, they're still moving at you about the same rate, but they didn't change much on the Doppler effect. Notice not a huge change here. But then as he starts moving across, the up to about 59 degrees up, and that's another 2.5 minutes later, approximately here. The Doppler effect continues to move. Your uplink frequency is now your transmit frequency is now moved up to 435.345, and your downlink frequency is moved down to at a smaller rate because it's 2 meters, is 145.8817. Then when it's directly overhead, that's when the published frequencies are good to go. Okay, you're thinking, how do I do this? What do I do? I would suggest programming these frequencies into your radios. The Waxon is particularly nice because you could program an uplink frequency on 70 centimeters and a downlink frequency on 2 meters. So you can make one channel for each one of these steps as it goes across the sky. And once it passes directly over or as high as it's going to get, then the frequency changes continue as the satellite starts moving away from you relative to your position, and until it hits the horizon, and you'll notice that the frequency continues to go up on the uplink side and down on the downlink side. The question here is, how do you know when to change that channel? And the thing is, that's for these particular satellites. That's why being able to hear your transmission at the same time as hearing your transmission is a good thing, because you don't know, you won't know if all you do is talk and don't hear yourself talking, because your downlink will sound pretty close to pretty good. Notice that for 2 meter on the downlink, it's only like 6 kilohertz from one end from the start of the pass to the other. But now when you're trying to transmit, you'll notice there's about 40 kilohertz. How wide is an FM signal? Ish. Remembering back from your tech class, about 3 to 5 kilohertz. Works great for VHF, no big deal there. But as you're trying to transmit 40 kilohertz, you leave that on one frequency, it's not going to get to you're not going to be able to utilize that entire satellite. So you do have to listen as on the downlink comes in. The only reason the other satellite that I use the other examples here, a medium pass, that shows a TCA, or closest point, of 51 degrees above the horizon. And just kind of give you a feel of how of how high above the horizon each one of these things is. If you can see my arm, how high it is right now, that's at about 80 degrees. This is about 55, and that's the median pass. Now I show one that, and the very bottom here shows one that just barely gets above the horizon. Oh man, I knew I blew something away. Hold on. Apparently this did not, that did not save. The last one here is only supposed to be about 16 degrees above the horizon. So I apologize for having blown that. I'll note that down to fix that before it comes out to you. When a satellite's really low on the horizon like that, you don't have very much usable time. I do know that the times that the times were times are messed up too. I'll fix that one. It's not, you don't have very much time to use on a low pass like that. Probably the most important thing to being able to make the satellite contacts is using your antenna properly. This gives you the examples of the options you may have as far as antennas trying to work satellites. Yagi's real nice, and that's what I have right here. And you point that directly at the satellite and you get your best signal that way. Now on the for a handy talkie, don't point that antenna to the at the satellite. As you all probably remember from your courses and your knowledge base, if you point an antenna at somebody like this, you're getting nothing off the end of that antenna. You see the way this is sending all of its signal from the side up to the satellite there. So that's how you would use your handy talkie. And then a car, if you're using your mobile in a car, that's a vertical antenna with a but it's omnidirectional. So just, you don't have to do anything special there. Although I will say that in this example, the antenna being on the bumper is less effective than if it were up in a higher spot on the car. Anybody have any questions about the about antennas at this point? Because I'm sure you probably have other ones that you're using. Okay, now we're going to get into the how to find some of this stuff yourself, because you'll have a lot of resources just on this presentation alone after I fix that last slide to understand what's going on as the satellites go across and how they work. But for example, AMSAT has a great predictor tool, and Ham Radio Deluxe is also a very good program for using or checking these out. I see, let's see. Dave is right that you're not going to get a lot of gain because it is an omnidirectional antenna on the car, but you should be able to compensate with that both by reception and power. Keep it in mind that one of the great advantages you have is when the satellite is above the horizon, your line of sight is being affected by very little at that point. Now, granted, you would always prefer if you had your options, you would have a directional beam antenna that can do both elevation and azimuth. But with the FM satellites, even the vertical antenna on the car will work, and surprisingly well for the ISS, for that matter. Going back to the resources for finding satellite passes, both Apple and Android have great apps for satellite tracking and satellite capability. If you go in to search your different app stores, just put in amateur satellite tracking, and you'll usually get you'll get a group of different apps that will work for you. Here's an example of the AMSAT pass predictor. Not sure how well you can see that at this point, but let's see. Did that mess up anybody's view?
Yeah, we've got a bunch of gray rectangles over it right now.
Okay.
Better, thank you.
Okay. The this will you put in information here. The so you got to remember pick the satellite. They will use your grid square to figure out where you are, and then it will give you information. It will give you Latin long, and then when you picked out the satellite, told it where you are, and hit I believe that's the predict. Then you'll get this chart over here showing you the next 10 passes that would be visible from your location. Granted, for a lot of us, the ISS during certain times is truly visible. Most of these satellites are way too small to ever be seen. It's just that it would be within within sight of them if they were visible. Ham Radio Deluxe, their satellite program has all sorts of things you can use. It has the bullseye chart. It has a simple map. Notice the A and the L standing for AOS and LOS. So here's where we come up and here's where we go down. And also a elevation and time chart that tells you when it would be coming over. While we're on this bullseye chart, you'll see this in a lot of prediction programs. The part of it is pretty straightforward. North, south, east, west. Okay, that's direction. So if the satellite is on this green line about here, you know it's at about 45 degrees. However, these circles here, that's not a distance from you. It's actually the elevation. You'll notice that you have degree markers here: 0, 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, and then there's the center bullseye. So this tells you how high to raise your antenna if you have a directional antenna. So if you have one of these directional antennas like this, and it tells you to it tells you that the satellite is 45 degrees above the horizon. You would have approximately that angle to get the satellite. I think you guys can see me from there. Although I lost my picture. That bullseye, once you learn to use it, is a very, very handy tool. Now here's an example of a iOS, an Apple app. This is Sat. I'll get you the name of this one. It's but you'll notice it has the bullseyes as well: 0, 30, 60, and directly overhead. This is an example of a pass that occurred on Monday, 22 January 2018, and here's what occurred during that pass. It started off from the north here, and similar to where it would come up here if you were looking at the horizon, if that was a 90-degree horizon. And the frequency for AO91 when it came up to stay on to be able to make the contacts is 435.240 for transmit, receive at 145.960. You'll see across here as the satellite goes up that that while the UHF frequency changes quite a bit, about 5 kilohertz per step, we just go ahead and leave the VHF right where it is. You might have a little bit of weak signal on the VHF side on either end, but by leaving it in the center, you can because of the width of an FM signal, you should be able to hear it all the way through. So all you're really focusing on is changing the UHF frequency along the pass. 435.245. 435.250 when it hit its peak there, when it hit its TCA. Now it starts going down. UHF at 435, 255, and then 435, 260 as it goes below the horizon. Here's your published frequencies below. Notice these two are exactly the same as the frequency when it hits its highest point. 435.250, 145.960. And as I say, when you're tracking it, be ready for the tumble. Just because the signal fades a little bit doesn't mean you're aimed the wrong direction with your handy-talkie like this, or your Yagi like that. It could just be it's gone a little crazy on you. And those do tumble in space. There are not a lot of expensive systems keeping them straight like some of the older ones did. Now here's an example of what you'll be doing to make a standard QSO. I will admit that I listened to satellite QSOs for probably about 6 months before I got guts enough to try one myself. I just kind of learned and listened and learned. But here's what you'll hear on the radio. If there's an opportunity for a small break in transmission, someone's listening, and that's when they're going to try to make their contact. And how will they do it? Well, like in this case, you'll say your call sign and grid square. In this example here, Kilo India 5, Foxtrot Romeo, Echo Mike 60, and usually about that fast too to try to get it in there. Then if someone responds, this is a case where we get the ARRL headquarters up in Connecticut. They might say KI5FR, Whiskey 1, Alpha Whiskey, Fox November 31. That's their grid square up in Connecticut. And then I'll say Whiskey 1, Alpha Whiskey, Kilo India 5, Foxtrot Romeo, QSL. That's basically what you do on FM. There's not a lot of talking on there because everyone's trying to make the contacts to say they've done it. They're a scarce resource and they're very busy as well. So a couple of rules, guidelines. I won't say rules, say guidelines. Don't call CQ. Do not do that. It's kind of like calling CQ on your local repeater, and you probably saw that that's not what you do there either. CQs take a long time, and there are a lot of people trying to make contacts, and it takes a lot of space out there. And no long QSOs. There are some exceptions to this. Not last summer because, well, we were all stuck here at home. The summer before last, I was in North Carolina, and we had two simultaneous satellites come across, one about 5 minutes before the other. Well, I didn't have my radio set up for the first one that came across, so I set it up for the second one. And I went ahead and got on and got a contact with a guy in Pennsylvania, if I remember correctly. He and I, we do the quick QSO like above, and we stop and we listen for anybody else. Nobody's on that frequency. So we came back, we talked a little bit. We get plenty of breaks because we do not want to hog that resource, but nobody was on it. I think, we believe what happened was everyone went to the first one and was working that, and we actually had a real live QSO, which is extremely rare on FM and not advised unless a situation like that shows up. And like I say, we gave lots of breaks to make sure that anybody who needed contact would get one. Long QSOs are for the transponder satellites that are sideband. That's something to check out after you work this. The hassle with the sideband satellites is they really do require a radio with sideband capability, and those are not as common now as they used to be. The IC9700 is in current production, and that is a UVHF radio. The IC9100 recently went out of production. That had the capability. The TS2000 from Kenwood was a really nice radio. I had one of those for many years and made hundreds of satellite contacts on it. It's now out of production, but you can find a lot of those on the open market as well. Another recent vintage is the Yaesu FT847. That was a satellite design radio, and after a couple of glitches in the first production run, they really got that thing right, and there are people who absolutely love that. Those are not cheap radios to pick up used. for the most part, they're down in the hundreds now. So that's at least somewhat more workable. They were much more expensive when they first came out. So if you ever get a hankering to do sideband, those are the most recent vintage radios that are available. The IC9700, as I said, is still in production. Now I'm going to show you. Now I'm going to have you listen to some contacts. What this is a satellite presentation I did at Antioch Elementary School back in 2010. Had one of the kids who was my auto rotor. I gave her that. I gave her my cell phone with the tracking device on there, and she used that to aim the satellite and did a great job, as you'll hear from this example. So you'll hear some. I'll start this up. You'll hear some contacts. Let me know if you can't hear this when I start up. It may be a little tougher in the church there. Give me a thumbs up if you can hear it.
Kilo 8 Yankee, Sierra Echo, in Echo November 91. K8YSE, K4 KOL, Echo Mike 78. K4 KOL, K8YSE, you're sounding good in EN 91. Same here, John, always sounding real good. No problem here, copying you. So, sounds good, 7-3. K4 KOL, Whiskey 6 Golf Mike Tango. Whiskey 6 Golf Mike Tango, K4 KOL, Echo Mike 78. K4 KOL, Whiskey 6 Golf Mike Tango, Echo Nancy 37. Kilo India 5, Romeo Echo Mike 60 with school kids. Any help? Yeah, so India 5 and Echo Mike 60 with the school kids. This is Kilo 8, Yankee Sierra Echo. Kilo 8, Yankee Sierra Echo. John in Cleveland. Echo November 91, over.
Hi, I'm Marissa.
Antioch Elementary School. Okay, and it's Kilo India 5, and what's the suffix, over? Still got us there. I've got Marissa here holding on to the antenna for us. How are we coming in? You're coming in good, Melissa. We can hear you loud and clear. And I need at the end of your call sign. What's the suffix on your call sign? Kilo India 5, and the rest of it is what? Call sign is Kilo India 5, Foxtrot Romeo, and Echo Mike 60. Next is coming up now.
Hi, I'm Gabriella.
Okay, very good. You sound great on the satellite here. My name is John, and I'm in Cleveland, Ohio. And it's good to work you here on the satellite. Over.
Hello, my name is Miranda. Hello, my name is Emma.
Okay, I think Emma, and I missed the other one there. You got a little noisy there. But we're copying all of you, and congratulations, and you're talking through a satellite orbiting above the Earth at almost 800 kilometers, which is close to probably 500 miles, 550 miles. We'll let somebody else work you here. KI5FR, Echo 7-3. 7-3, thanks a lot. Next person for KI5FR. KI5FR, Kilo India 4, Uniform Kilo 5, Global, Echo Mike 96. Hello, Tim.
My name is Zachary.
FR from Whiskey Charlie 7 Victor, Delta November 45.
Hello, my name is Zachary.
55FR from Whiskey Charlie 7 Victor, Delta November 45. Copy, Delta November 35 or 45. We are recording this so we can get all the call signs later. We got a few more people. They're going to each, we're going to have 3 people call their names. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Jeffrey. Hannah. Miranda.
And did you copy all 3 of those folks? Did you copy them, Kerry? Well, I correct. I didn't catch the names, no. Whiskey Charlie 7 Victor. Yeah, the audio is down a little bit on the school kids. That's why it's making it tough to copy. Okay, copy that. I think we got the antenna in better shape now. KI5FR. Next up is... Okay, I copied Tracy. Over.
I'll go ahead and stop it there. School kids had a great time, and it was one of the students who was operating the antenna. You could see she kept it pretty steady because it's a very directional antenna. In fact, it was this antenna back here that we did that with, as well as working with this handy talkie. Gosh, 10 years ago. So we really had a great time with it, and the kids enjoyed it. I've done that about 3 or 4 different times over the years, and while it's nice to talk about, when the kids can go out there and put a hand on and do it, then it's great. One of the things we used to do from out at the firehouse when we would have our Sunday afternoon openings is have people make their first satellite contacts out there as well. And hopefully as COVID kind of dies down, we can start doing things like that again. Okay, and as I promised at the end of the presentation here, we've got a list of frequencies to work with for the satellites that I mentioned before. You'll notice here that this is set up for a person's radio who could do both the transmit on one band, receive on the other. And you'll notice that he kept the VHF frequency the same all the way through, and the UHF frequency changed by 5 kilohertz all the way through. The one in bold here is the published frequency in which you would use the highest point. He kept one channel in here for the 74. For that 74 hertz tone in case he needed to turn the radio back on again. So that's how he programmed that radio for SO50. Here are the frequencies for the new ISS crossband repeater. Similar to what this guy did up here, just use 145.990 for an uplink and 67 for the hertz, and it can be used on all the channels. And here are the Doppler affected frequencies as it goes across the sky. The uplink is the transmit frequency of 145.99, and here are your downlink frequencies as the satellite goes across. We have a similar chart over here for the AO91 and AO92. You notice he did the code for his channel setup by using the first 2 numbers as the same as the number designator for the satellites, which I thought was pretty smart. That pretty well ends the presentation as I have it. I highly encourage you to try AO91 or 92 on your handy talkie to start with. Use some of the resources I'll send out before the end of the evening with links to prediction tools, things like that. And then just listen the first time around. See if you can hear a satellite. If you can figure out this will be how you learn where they are. Once you learn where they are, then you can start adjusting frequencies and staying on and trying to keep up with Doppler effect. And then you can try one out for yourself. What kind of questions I have now?
This is
Yeah,
Kev
before
for
you run.
ZER, DJ. No real question, but just for the group and everybody else in there, if you're looking for a reliable app to track satellites with, one of the ones that I use is the Whiskey 1 Alpha November Tango satellite tracker. There's a free version and a pay version, and it gives both the rise and the set along with the max elevation on those, and whether it's FM or SSB. And when you click on them, you can click on a location of them and see where they are, and if they're in your area and you're capable of hitting them. It has come in exceptionally handy as far as communicating with the satellites or trying to hit them, even from just a handheld sitting out here in Niceville.
So you've had good luck with the handheld listening to the satellites as well?
Here and there, I have a lot of foliage around me. I'm actually not too far from you. You live down in Dana Point, and I'm up here over by the high school. So
That's right.
I kind of got to walk out into the center median, if you will, where the trees and the power lines are not, to have less interference. It looks really awkward when I'm sitting out there in my lawn chair in the middle of the highway, in the middle of the road, basically. But yeah, I've had some luck, not so much some others. Sometimes when I'm away from my area of living and I'm out and about in the county, I have better luck with my mobile rig and in conjunction with my handheld.
That's cool because it's a lot of fun out there, and as you learn to use them, then you can go on your own de-expedition, if you will. We have enough satellite operators in Echo Mike 60 to where it's not one of the most needed grid squares. However, on the other side of I believe it's Lake Jackson up in Forala, in Alabama and Echo Mike 61 is a much rarer grid square, and so I've taken one day I decided to combine the running hobby and the ham radio hobby. Went up there and got one satellite pass early in the morning. Then oftentimes when a satellite comes across, it'll come across the second time in about an hour and a half. So I went ahead and just put the radios back in the car, ran around the lake one time, it's about 3.5 miles, and got back with about 45 to 50 minutes to spare, and got it back out and made another set of contacts. About 13 people got Echo Mike 61 that day, and it was a pretty good haul for a couple of FM satellites coming across.
We got a question here from the church.
Go ahead.
Hi, Ron. On the first or second night that the ISS repeater was active, I listened during the day, didn't hear anything on the frequency, and about 11:30 at night, I had put the bow phone on 437, and I heard at W3 working at XE1 on the ISS repeater that night about 11:30. Inside.
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's a 25-watt transmitter now on the ISS, so that'll be an easy one to hear.
It's going to be an awesome time with that one because that's going to be a lot. Have they started considering the ISS a satellite again? Because that was always kind of weird because it was satellites are considered unmanned, so there was always kind of a difference. Not that it's that big a deal. Still cool to use a space-based repeater of any sort, but it's gonna be a lot of people's first contact now.
I heard the CWID today, but I didn't copy it. I was listening to the QSO that was going on. So.
It has been kind of up and down, so I did not check today, but I know over the weekend, like I said, had 3 days worth of passes that it wasn't heard. But they did do some crew communication on it, and I believe they did a school or some type of presentation type thing. So that might have been why it was down. Mike, I show you muted. There you are.
Okay. I was using space bar and apparently it wasn't working. Power levels. If we hit it with the power from a base station, are we blasting into it too high and we're going to cut out all the bowfangs?
Yes, that's the unfortunate thing on the FM side.
So we ought to use full power.
Yeah, it's best not to. I wish those guys didn't as much, but they do. But yeah, try to keep. But as far as trying to just capture effect, that's the biggest hassle. Is somebody is just blasting away, and you can only do so much with that. But like I said, I've made many contacts. Many people have made their very first contact on 5 watts, and this thing's sitting behind me here. We used to Richard KE4 VFX. He made his first one there. We made it. number of people made their first satellite contacts using that equipment. And 5 watts.
Got one bank of the 2820 with about 10 satellite frequencies in, and I just scan through that. And as satellites go by, I pick them up.
Have you made your contacts yet?
No, I'm still in the listening mode.
That's okay. Like I said, it was 6 months before I had guts enough to do it, to tell you the honest truth. And it was a lot of listening because it was like I wanted to try to make sure I could do it right. Ted. Ted's comment was, I bet his battery didn't die that time.
Let you live that one down, will we?
Nope, but that's okay. It's a good lesson learned. For those of you not familiar, we were at a civic event, and I had given away my spare radio to somebody else, and the radio, it was actually this radio. I was using my probably 8 or 9 year old lithium-ion battery, and it finally given up the ghost, and I was pretty useless without a spare battery. I now have 2 4-amp batteries for that thing now. They both work very well. But lesson learned is, if you're going to do some type of event where you need the radio, make sure and have some type of backup, whether it's a spare radio or spare batteries for the one you're using.
Ron, do you have any recommendations on stuff to the card or whatever for azimuth and elevation to put on those tripods? Or are you just going to eyeball it a little bit?
I basically eyeball it now. If you use the full setup like a Yaesu, I forget what the prefix is, but it's a 5500, I believe, is the rotor and a controller card. Those do an excellent job. There are some Arduino solutions that I came across while I was researching about 7 weeks ago, that built in Australia, that they built an entire tracking system, not the antennas included, but the tracking system itself for, I want to say, 150 to 200 Australian dollars. I don't know what that equated to in the US, but a lot of the equipment could be bought here. They also showed an Arduino control on some old Channel Master television antennas, using one for azimuth and one for elevation. But when I went to go look up the pieces for it, there were none available in the U.S. Probably have to keep an eye on eBay to get those. But apparently it's pretty heavy duty. You can do a great job. Well, if there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and call it a night, and look forward to trying to work satellites with you guys at one point. I'm going to try to do a better job of getting those out when the. Ted, you have something?
Yeah, before we call it quits, has anybody heard if the church is going to be doing anything Halloween night?
I've got a message out to Mark now, KK4VAZ, to see if we are.
Okay. It probably won't be, but just in case.
Yeah, I figure it's probably somewhere around the 50-50 chance.
Yeah.
This is KI4ZER. Ron, this has been a great presentation. Not so much of a question, but more of a share, if I'm allowed to, at this moment in time, to share my screen. And what I can do is share from another ham who built stuff that he built an antenna for satellite tracking that he got out of Goodwill. It was pretty funny. He actually used a golf club, an old camera tripod, a couple of Wuxins, a UGV3R and a 5DR Wuxin radio, and an old cell phone that he utilized in order to make an ISS communication platform. It was actually really cool. let's see if I can share my screen here. Hold on 1 second.
While you're trying to work that, there's a question over at the over at the church. Go ahead.
Ron, I just want to say thank you for a great presentation. Also like to thank Bruce, who got here way before the rest of us to set this thing up. And this is one of my first times back, and to realize that Bruce had to be here to set things up, I just want to say appreciate it.
Appreciate the folks who are doing stuff like that, and we really need to find some folks to kind of help out to kind of take some of the burden off these guys. They've been doing yeoman's work, so we need to all kind of learn a little bit more about Zoom chat and see if we can spread that fun wealth.
We would appreciate that.
Nice touch.
All right, folks, so if you can see here, this is actually my father, N0 KBS, Bud Stewart, out there in St. Peter, Missouri. And he went to Goodwill and got all this equipment other than the radios and the microphones and the headset, obviously. And he built his own aperture to communicate with satellites and the ISS, especially when the ISS came back online. And you can see he upgraded from 1 radio to 2 radios. And he's running twin UG3DRs with a Woxum with a satellite tracking app at that moment in time. And he modified it onto a rotating old camera mount. He built all of this from scratch. He literally did this for like $15 from Goodwill one day. And here's his post on Facebook that talks about its version 1.01 of the N0 KBS ported satellite system. Made equipment pallet out of a plastic cutting board from the dollar store. It holds 2 handhelds, allows for full duplex comms, a recorder so not as to miss that call sign during a hectic satellite QSO, as Ron was pointing out earlier, and Android phone running ISS tracker guide to pointing the antennas and connections to the antennas, as well as 2 speaker mics, headphones. Also redesigned the antenna to mount better to allow for the polarization of the antennas. He built it from plumbing parts. Works nice and smooth now. May swap out HCs for a full Bluetooth duplex mobile rig in the near future. Also considering incorporating a 1.2 gigahertz transceiver mode for L on AO92. Will attempt some on-air testing tomorrow, weather permitting. Cross your fingers. So when he built this stuff, he knew what he was doing. I mean, he's been a ham for many, many years, since the 60s. However, this apparatus that he has created has allowed him to communicate exceptionally with many of the satellites based off of just handhelds from his backyard. And as you can see, it's not a large backyard. He's got a lot of coils around, power lines, other homes and other interference capabilities, things like that. But he has made so many contacts on that already, it's not even funny. And this is from a 70-year-old man who's hard of hearing and everything else. But this is where I got my inspiration from to attempt to run around the county and try it with my mobile rig and my handheld in conjunction. So it can be done cheaply. It doesn't always have to be a professional grade satellite antenna that you're going to find online. I just wanted to share this with you guys in conjunction with what Ron was talking about, because this can be done for literally under $100 if you already have most of the equipment.
Some of the, I was going to say, some of the equipment that, or some of the links that I will send you are going to be inexpensive versions of these antennas you can work with as well. I mean, to the point where one is called a $4 antenna. I think it'd be a little bit more than that, but it has the similar Yagi approach for a 2 meter and 70 centimeter. And probably the most expensive part you'll buy for it is the coax connector.
Ron, on some of the listings of the satellite frequencies, it lists a beacon frequency. Is that a CW frequency that's used all the time?
It's normally used all the time. Yeah, it varies by satellite, and it's not. Some will be as simple as CW. One of the beacon frequencies is, let's see, beacons and telemetry. Telemetry is another big one that you'll see a lot, and the telemetry happens a lot. The Foxsats from AMSAT, they have a program on the AMSAT website that you can download and monitor and send back information from the satellite. It helps them understand where their signals are going and stuff like that. So you got all sorts of stuff, all sorts of data moving around that way. There are some part-time APRS satellites that work up there. They try the D-Star satellite, but I've not heard a lot of success with that one. Back over to you, Mike.
Yeah, I was just asking DJ whether that mount that he was showing his dad's mount was actually servo-driven from a computer or whether it's still manually pointed.
Oh, it's manually pointed on the camera tripod, and then there was the other one, the first one that he had, which was servo-driven. However, he was having less than success at that, and he chose to do manual control. He says he's faster at it. It's more receptive to tracking the satellite. So he's got one hand on the microphone and one hand on the actual handle of the device and rotating and following the satellite manually as he's tracking it on his app at the same time.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions for Ron?
Ron, I bought a interface from India that controls the azimuth and elevation rotors, and it was only $50 plus $20 for shipping. So it really, really works great. Good tracking with 14 element Yagis.
Can you send that link out?
I will send it. I'll send it to you, and you can pass it on if you will.
Okay, sure will.
Okay.
Okay, if there are no other questions, then we'll go ahead and we will close out this Tech Night meeting. Very successful. Thanks, Ron, for all your help, all your preparation. And I'm sure you're going to get some more questions as more and more people get interested.
With the ISS now, everybody can do it.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for participating. Thanks to our new folks coming into the club. Suzanne, Raz, good to see you here. Hope to get you excited about this hobby. All right. 73, everybody. We're going to close down the net. Thank you.
Enjoyed it,
Thanks,
Ron.
everybody.
Bruce, do you need
Thanks a
again?
lot. Talk to you guys later.
I'm good. Thank you.